Hello everyone again, this is Cypher A here, reporting on me doing my thing with Pokemon VGC. Again, completely uncut, completely unedited, just talking with all the ums, ers, and so forth. Hope you all are doing good today. Today, just reporting what I did in Pokemon VGCs. Basically, I used today as a means to actually start building my team. As I mentioned in the previous video, there was a couple of Pokemon I had in mind in terms of what I wanted to raise. Some of them that were brought up to my friends were including, Pokemon like Zapdos. Of course, you got your, the ones that are overused in the VGC format to begin with, like Fluttermane and freaking Iron Hands, and those were also brought up too. But ultimately, I'm not expecting to get super far into this to begin with, and I really wanted to just enjoy the game, have some fun with it. So what I've ended up doing is I'm actually choosing a Pokemon that's not that well used, probably not really that expected. Might not perform super well, but under the right circumstances, it might. So the Pokemon I decided on is Revavroom. A couple of reasons why with Revavroom. First of all, it is my favorite Pokemon in the Paldea region, partially because it is literally based on a car engine. Um, those of you who know me pretty well would also know the fact that I am a classic car enthusiast. I have a 68 Volkswagen Beetle way back in Texas, still waiting for me to build it and bring it up north. I also have, or had at one point, a 91 Mazda Miata. Uh, Unfortunately, I lost that car about a decade ago. That's a long, long story with that one. But I've always been a classic car enthusiast, or just a general, car enthusiast with anything that has, personality to it. Modern vehicles really don't have personality to them, so they don't really interest me too much, with the exception of a few out there. I could go on a tangent about cars as a whole, but I know that's not what you all are here for. Bottom line, that's the reason why I love Revavroom. It's basically a car-related Pokemon, and it is something that I've always wanted to see, though I always doubted could be turned into a Pokemon, but those geniuses over at Game Freak somehow were able to figure it out and make it happen. Um, so because of that, I wanted to, make a competitive Revavroom. I did hear very early on that a lot of people were seeing it as a viable competitive Pokemon, which really made me excited. I'm like, oh, that's super awesome. So that means I could probably make one whenever I can find time. That time is right now, and the circumstances seem to be a little mixed when it comes to Revavroom. I did take a lot of notes while I was doing my studying earlier today, because I watched a couple of Pokemon VTubers, or, not Pokemon VTubers, Pokemon YouTubers, not VTubers. I mean, some of them are VTubers, but you know what I mean. I just basically searched up Revavroom on YouTube, and I tried to find anyone who was talking about strats with Revavroom. Some of them popped up just generally. I mean, I'll look down the list here. I mean, I'll bring this out immediately. There was one Pokemon YouTuber, James Beak, and then there was another one, A plus one. A plus one I've seen pop up more often than not. They're good Pokemon YouTubers. They're really good with their content. It's just not what I was trying to look for. They generally gave like a 1 to 2 sentence on how to use Revavroom, and that's it, because they used a rental team that had Revavroom in it, admittedly, which perfectly fine, perfectly cool. And then they showed off the Pokemon for about an hour with their battles and everything. Perfectly fine. It is what it is with that. But it didn't give me an idea of how to build it appropriately. So unfortunately, as good of a content creators as they are, it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. There was another one that I found by the name of Pimp Knight, who seems to be a Dragonite YouTuber. I'm not sure if they ever do any sort of VTubing as of Dragonite, but their persona definitely is, what we would call in the furry scene, a scaly. I mean, it's Dragonite, but dragon, scaly, you know what I mean. Either way, they seem to be from Europe. And they focused a lot on basically a lot of battle sets, or they seem to focus on making as many battle sets for Pokemon as possible, even if it isn't competitive. That worked out pretty good, because for my interest at least, because hey, I mean, Revavroom isn't really that competitive, at least in terms of being used out there. So why not just go ahead and check out what this guy had to offer? So he mentioned that typing was a big weakness for Revavroom. ground types, especially such as Corviknight. Otherwise, he does confirm it would be an underused Pokemon. Again, I'm reading off my bullet points from the notes I made. But yeah, that was one thing that he mentioned. And we'll see later that it does kind of become a trend. He mentioned several specific sets that could be used. A total of 5, actually. I wasn't expecting 5. He mentioned a single shift gear set that essentially works on, basically building up 2 shift gears to do bulldoze. But the move sets also include gunk shot, iron head, and shift gear, which looks like it's all right. But then there's also a double trick room set that seems to be more focused on doubles. Spin out works perfect with trick rooming due to speed decrease, which that's absolutely true. The only downside is 0 IVs. He didn't mention this in the video, but I figured this is what he wanted to bring out too. 0 IVs would definitely be needed in something like this, and we definitely know how to get IVs to 31. 0 is a different story, so that's where you're playing old school and luck of the draw with that. So I wasn't 100% certain if I wanted to mess with that as a result. But it did have parting shot, spin out, gunk shot, and protect. All those look pretty good. But again, I would need to get the 0 IV. Then he mentioned more of a gimmick set with the TS setup set. I'm not exactly sure what that meant, but basically it has Magnet Rise, Haze, Toxic Spike, Self-Destruct. He did mention it was a gimmicky set, as I mentioned. It's supposed to be bulky. I'm going to get to that here in a second. Takes advantage of ground immunity as a result, and normal Terra, for the Terra shards, to hit with a normal harder with possibly a self-destruct, I'm imagining. Magnet Rise is supposed to help with actually levitate up from there. Pretty good points with those either way. Spin and Boom is supposed to be very similar to the shift gear set that he mentioned as the very first one, but with choice banding instead. Pretty much more or less pretty good with that. So we have a cat here. I might introduce him at the end of the video, but he's definitely asking for attention right now. Lastly, we got a special set that he mentioned about Overheat, Steel Beam, Venoshock, and Shift Gear, designed as a meme set. I don't know what's supposed to be the difference between a gimmick set and a meme set, but okay, sure, whatever. Venoshock can team with Toxic Spike's Pokemon, so okay, sure. So overall thoughts, a decent Poketuber, though his analysis don't really have any backups or credentials or anything. He's more of a casual player with casual thought. Not meant any disrespect, of course, in that case. It's just more the fact that essentially, there's going to be competitives and there's going to be casuals. I could be wrong. I might be, misassuming here. Maybe these are supposed to be competitive based. And if he ever sees this video, I deeply apologize for making the misassumptions. I should not criticize so immediately. But this is coming from somebody who has their very first initial thoughts. So, so take the criticism how you do. But either way, he is a pretty good, Pokemon VTuber or Pokemon YouTuber. I'm gonna keep saying VTuber over and over again because, again, his freaking avatar, for freaking sakes, there you go. That's what he looks like. So you got to forgive me. He does look like he's a VTuber. But that being said, I will be linking all these videos in the description below because I feel like at the very least, I owe these guys that much for looking at their videos and getting some sort of content from them all the same, whether I agree with it or disagree with it. But yeah, my main takeaway from this either way is that, and I even asked him this too in the comments, and I haven't gotten a response back yet, is essentially, it definitely seems like he was focused more on singles with most of these sets. The only one seemed to be with the double trick room, but again, that one's a really difficult one to set up with, considering the situation. But again, the analysis about having no backups or credentials, it's more so in the fact that, when I say that, it's mostly in terms of it's hard to tell if these would work, especially when I was looking at the comments section. Like, most people were just agreeing, like, yeah, this seems all right, this seems good, but there wasn't any other, not only in the comments, but also when I did my further research, there wasn't any other sets that were being built like this, especially as we'll get to here in a second, with this other, Pokemon YouTuber I found. So it's really hard to tell if I can trust, especially the double trick room set, if I did decide to set that up. So they're good ideas, but I don't know if I would want to invest the time in, making these kind of sets all the same, especially since, spoiler alert, I'm not really using Pokemon Showdown. I'm going to be building up these Pokemon from the ground up and use them directly straight into Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I know a lot of people would likely disagree with that, but I have my reasons for that all the same. Um, Going into the next person that I looked up, Cybertron. I mean, anybody who's into the VGC scene definitely knows who Cybertron is. I've known who Cybertron is since he popped up way back in 2011, 2012-ish or so, like shortly after I stopped playing VGC when I tried for a brief while there. But he did mention Shift Gear is mentioned as a viable move to speed it up and can counter against Amoonguss. Can also be supported via Encore Mouse Hole, or Mouse Hole, sorry, or Mouse Hold. I don't know. I can't pronounce his name. The mouse. And wall Pokemon after Terra Water. Stresses ground type speed as a big weakness. Again, seeing that again. In addition to being walled by other steel types, along with Annihilate and the mouse. One-hit KOs will not happen often with this Pokemon's attacks, and the speed is pretty mid. So those are the weaknesses, but he also mentioned some strengths too. Really, really appreciated that Cybertron Aaron brought up that information, because that gave me a good idea what his strengths are, but also what his actual weaknesses are, which actually were just further confirmed. So even though I did say that Pimp Knight did not really have any backup or credentials, at least in that regard, he definitely did, because, hey, Cybertron said almost the same thing in terms of the weaknesses. So, but he did mention a set that he personally found. Again, like the first couple of Pokemon YouTubers that I found, that they mentioned rental teams they found. Cybertron did admit that he found this rental team too, but he actually gave the analysis of why it worked. So this specific one, it was only one set he gave, but it's still a good solid one either way. Protect, Poison Jabs, Shift Gear, Iron Head. He did mention the Clear Amulet prevented stat reduction while helps against Intimidate Pokemon. Yeah, I said that right. Boost up with Shift Gear. The mouse helps with Revavroom and is a good lead with him with Friend Guard and Population Bomb. Encore with the mouse to prevent setups. Have counters against fire. Revavroom is a huge counter against Amoonguss yet again. So that sounded like a pretty solid strategy. Again, everything that is sounded with that is, or the way that he described it, does make it sound like it's a pretty solid strategy overall. So that gave me some confidence. Like, okay, yeah, this sounds good. There are some major weaknesses too. Again, I'll get to that in a second. Then he gave, more information regarding, mouse hold, along with with the Flutter Mains, which I did say to myself that if I'm going to be using it, at least one Pokemon that is used, completely in the meta, like it's absolutely meta right now, it's definitely Flutter Main. Two reasons: because one, it's really good. Second, because admittedly, I am a big fan of Mischievous. I would say it's easily my top 10 or top 15 favorite Pokemon of all time. So the fact that Flutter Mains exists as kind of like a past version of it, it's just even more of a reason for me to use it. So again, another Pokemon I do love. But with Mouse Hold, it did mention about teammate with Revavroom, helps debuff weaknesses for Revavroom due to Friend Guard ability, Population Bomb. Pretty much copied the same information I had from there earlier, so that makes perfect sense. But with Flutter Main, it substitute with Amoonguss and tricks players thinking that the setup is needed as a result, instead of going for an immediate attack. Can outspeed most Flutter Mains with the setup that's set up here. So, I don't know. Again, these specific two I'll get to in more depths when the time comes, because I'll be honest, I did completely decide to go ahead and use Cybertron's setup. It was out of all the videos I watched, there's one more person I have to get to, but he didn't really give much of a team analysis per se, or an in-depth review, but that's the issue. Out of all my research on YouTube, Aaron was the only person who actually gave detailed analysis on Revavroom and the actual mechanics behind them and the plus and minuses, and went into very deep details. There was nobody else I could find immediately on YouTube that was doing that. Maybe there's somebody out there that is, but you know how YouTube works, where like you look down 5 or 10 videos and then it tries to find something that's relevant to your search and it's not exactly as relevant. That's exactly what happened after a while. So it is what it is, but I'm glad that at least, Cybertron did give that analysis. The last person I was looking up, I know a lot of you are really not going to like it when I mention this guy because so many people do not like Verlisify. Um, I can hear everybody booing right now at this point. Now, look, the only reason why I wanted to look at his video is because um, I'm just not going to try hiding it. The information that he shared regarding the controversies with VGC in terms of the cheating, whether or not you want to call it cheating, let's just say that, you know, there are some things I did agree with him on. Some things I personally didn't really agree with him on. There's definitely a lot of other things I definitely don't agree on with him, but still, the point is that in terms of what he brought up with that, that is a stance I did agree with. So I was like, you know what? Let me see if I can look at his actual content, see if I can find anything related to Rever Room, because he stated that he, you know, makes a lot of videos regarding, you know, Pokemon and deep analysis. Let me look at what he's got. He really, the only Rever Room video that he had was a video about the Pokemon that basically cannot be used in the meta, even though the fact that he said in the very first video I decided to check up with him after that one take video I saw, where he said that any Pokemon could be viable in the meta format just as long as you don't use a basic Pokemon, which I agreed with that stance, but here he kind of went against that stance. I don't know. The bottom line is that he was more general thoughts. Basically, he basically mentioned about that Verve Room is unstable due not being bulky due to earthquake. Again, we're gonna get to that here. Shift gear also takes time to set up and opens him for counters as such. Again, totally agree with that. Totally, you know, totally understand that and everything. So there's not really any arguments I have per se. It's just the sheer fact that I'm trying to find pluses. Like, is there any sort of plus sides to Rever Room that I can look into as opposed to the minuses? But Rever Room was thrown into this video of Pokemon that should not be used in the meta. And it's like, so you're not going to mention any pluses for me like Aaron just brought up in his video. It's like, okay, so unfortunately, it just didn't work out. Again, I'm not saying, you know, I'm not going to go deep into, you know, any deeper into that in terms of the politics. Again, I know this is probably going to be a controversial take when it comes to how people feel about VGCs. I got my own takes about it in the end, you know, in terms of, you know, is Jennings cheating? Is it not cheating? Is it whatever? I have my opinions and how I feel about it. But I'm not going to get into it. All I'll say is I understand both sides. Gee, haven't we heard this specific sentence before? But still, the bottom line is I will respect anybody who makes the decisions on what they do. Just, you know, let me do what I got to do, basically, and we'll go from there. But that being said, though, going back into Velicify, unfortunately, ignoring everything about, you know, what people think of him or anything else, his stuff, again, just wasn't exactly what I was looking for. So all that being considered, going back into more positive stuff, in terms of overall, pretty much everybody is agreeing. Don't throw Rever Room out in ground types. Don't have them exposed to earthquake attacks. I definitely understood those points. The shift gear I points to, especially when Velicify mentioned it, I do agree with that too, ultimately. It's like, you need time to set that up, but you won't be given time in doubles, because you got two Pokemon attacking you, and both of them could be focused on that Rever Room, or they might not be focused on them at all because they think it might be a very underused Pokemon, so whatever. So ultimately, I'm just going with Cybertron setup. And what I did after deciding on that, and after playing a little bit of Pokemon Go at the park and, you know, enjoying my day off, and everything, a little bit later in the day, I did decide to go ahead and start building that Rever Room. I already had a level 75 Rever Room. I nicknamed Rose, which is nicknamed after my Volkswagen Beetle, of course, because I had to. And basically, I went on ahead and essentially got that whole team set up for, or at least I got it set up, is what I meant to say. I got it set up with the moveset was requested. I got the items, no problem. I got the IV set up, no problem. I got the EV set up, no problem. I have a lot of money in the game right now, so that didn't hurt me as much. I set up the hyper training on what it needed, no problem on that too. The only thing I was a little concerned about initially was the Terra Shards, because I only had about 30. I think if I was playing this pre-DLC, we would have a problem because everybody usually brings up that Terra Shards are usually really difficult to farm. They were not hard for me to farm at all with post-DLC. That charm that was released that helps with getting more Terra Shards helped immensely. I played for 30 minutes. I played about, how many was it? 2 3 stars and I think 2 4 stars, and I got the 30 I needed, no problem at all, and I was able to get River Room into that Terra Water type. So everything worked out fine in that case. Everything was good with that, and now it's ready. I was trying to see, as a side note, if I could get the friendly mark with it, so I could just have it, whenever it's summoned out, the partnership comment that's mentioned when it's summoned out. I wanted to really get that marked on there because again, Red Room is my favorite Pokemon. But seeing how long it was taking for me to just grind it, just riding around for for an hour or two, and that mark still wasn't popping, even though I had the friendship points required to get it with River Room, I decided to just go ahead and bail on that idea. I'm not gonna waste time doing that. I think that's one of the other aspects that people bring up when it comes to competitive, like, oh, you got to, use up a lot of time just to get the shiny you want, or I guess in this case, the mark you want. I do not care. I just want to play with, the teammates I want to have out there and just have them battle out there and have fun. So it is what it is. So River Room's ready. And now I know that I got to find Mousehold, and I also got to get Fluttermane set up as well too. So those are 2 other Pokemon I know I got to get set up. I'd work on Mousehold tomorrow, but as a lot of people know, once you go way past your 20s, then you got to start working. So I got to work tomorrow. It's going to be a long day tomorrow, so I don't know if I'm going to have the time to build that specific Pokemon. But when I do have the time, I will update you all on that. Let you know my endeavors as I look up more Pokemon YouTubers, whether, again, I'll look at Cybertron stuff again, maybe. Actually, I already did because of this video that I just looked up for River Room. But I might look at a few other videos just to see if they give their general thoughts, what kind of weaknesses I should be looking out for with Mousehold, since admittedly Cybertron didn't mention the weaknesses with Mousehold. Same for, Fluttermane. Look out for any sort of the weaknesses too. And just once I build my core 4, then I'll analyze all the weaknesses all 4 of them have and try to choose the last 2 based on that. And then next week, I'm hoping to get my battle started. I'm going to start trying to battle in the Season 11. I think it's Season 11. I think it is. It's with the new format. The format that they're going to follow at regionals, either way. And let's see how it works out. I'm expecting to get a lot of losses. I hope I get a lot of losses because, as a lot of people mention, losing is the very first thing you want to do in this game because that lets you learn and acknowledge what needs to be done to fix it. So we'll keep messing with this team in River Room. We'll see how far I can go, and I will keep you all updated. So look forward to the next entry here soon.